he has at the time. It's an evenly matched fight in the pitch black, middle of the night. No one can really win. But the British have to retreat, but Andrew Jackson has to retreat as well. The important thing that does is that slows them down. It makes them sort of wonder, what's this guy up to? We're going to stop and wait in our camp till every man and every rowboat gets here. That gives Jackson the time to dig the defensive position right here. You were standing where he and the American troops stood. They found this muddy ditch that's behind me. That's been there for more than 200 years. It's the property line between two sugarcane plantations. This is the time of year when the sugarcane would have just been harvested. So it would have been wide open fields, just like you see it today. They spent Christmas Eve, December 24th, digging out that ditch. They piled up mud right here to make a 6-foot high mud rampart that ran all the way from the riverfront to the swamp at the other end. He has 4,000 men with cannons behind a wall awaiting that British assault that comes on January 8th, 1815. And we look across that wide open field on a nice day like today and we think how silly it seems for those British soldiers in their bright red uniforms to march in wide open ranks across an open field. But it's not as stupid as it seems to us today. They did the best they could and they had a fairly sound plan. Keep in mind, those troops across that field are veterans of 20 years of war with Napoleon's army. They're not really that concerned with local militiamen, literally people who picked up their guns and walked from home to stand behind this wall. Those same troops were the ones that 3 months earlier were in Washington, D.C. When those troops were outnumbered 2-1 by American defenders outside their own capital, they had no trouble. Now the British troops have the 2-1 advantage. If they can get face to face with these defenders, they're going to win. Part of their plan, it's a 3-pronged assault. Across the river, they're going to go overnight and take the American guns that are covering this field from across the river. At the edge of the river, the far end, that's where Jackson's put the U.S. Marines and the 7th U.S. Infantry, the professional soldiers. The British will send 2,000 men to hit the most professional soldiers. That's going to keep them busy while most of the attack goes at the opposite side of the line. All the way at the end, at the edge of the swamp, 5,000 British troops will hit the Tennessee militia and the Choctaw Indians, where the line is the weakest. They're going to hit it at both sides. The weather is on their side so far. It's been really foggy. It's been deathly cold, below freezing overnight. That fog will conceal their approach, so the American cannons can't be as effective. If they can close that distance and get face to face with the American troops, they'll win. Now, a lot of things go wrong. It's a sound plan, but a lot of mistakes add up to make it a British disaster. First, the coordinating attack across the river gets bogged down and it's late. Over here at the edge of the river, those 2,000 men actually do really well. They actually overrun the American position, and an organized counterattack pushes them back. But it's kind of an even-matched fight over here. At this end, where the 5,000 troops are hitting it at the weakest spot, the sad thing for the British is that the weather doesn't hold up. That fog clears up the morning of the assault. It allows that American artillery to have a devastating effect. The 2 commanding generals are going to be killed by cannon fire. The attack really falls apart before it even gets to this wall. Within a couple of hours, the battle's over. What you have are 13 American casualties behind this wall. 7 killed and 6 wounded is the official number we have. There are 500 British prisoners. Anybody who made it to that ditch basically surrenders. 500 people taken prisoner, 300 are killed outright on the field, 1,200 wounded. They've taken out 2,000 of the British attackers. The British fall back to their camp. Now keep in mind they still have about 7,000 more waiting over there, and Jackson still has 4,000 behind this line. So he stops here, he stays behind the wall and waits. The British regroup. They go back out into the Gulf to regroup for another attack. Just when they're ready to take the city of Mobile and come around New Orleans from the back, that's the day they find out the war has ended. A peace treaty was signed by American diplomats on December 24th. That's Christmas Eve. That's the same day they were digging this defensive position. And that doesn't mean the war was over when this January 8th battle happened. What it means was that it was almost over. Had the British made it through this line, and were they in the city of New Orleans a month later, when the peace treaty arrived, the peace treaty is not worth the paper it's printed on. This American victory coming while the peace treaty was on the way, so Congress could look at it and ratify it, this victory on this field secures the end of the War of 1812. The conditions of the treaty are that everything goes back to the way it was when the war started. The British momentum has fizzled out, so they're not hoping to get anything from this war. They just want to go ahead and be at peace for the first time in 20 years. The Americans never thought they were going to have to fight that British army, so they are ecstatic for everything to go back to the way it was before the war ended. They don't want to fight the British army anymore. It started off as a war of opportunity, a war to express your independence. By the time of the action on this field, it was actually a war for the survival of this young republic. Even though the Americans started the fight, because they won here, they get to feel like this is the first time their independence was tested, and when it was tested, they did succeed. For generations after it, you'll celebrate July 4th and January 8th, both as Independence Day. You'll have fireworks, parades, and speeches. The attitude in America will be that on July 4th, 1776, America declared its independence. This is the time it was tested, and they succeeded. The Americans get to feel like they won the war, even though they didn't really get anything out of it, other than survival. The British, for their part, when this army leaves, 6 months later, Napoleon's going to reappear and they'll beat him at the Battle of Waterloo. This battle is not a big part of British history because it comes right before the end, finally, of their 20-year war with France. So they sort of feel good by the end of 1815 as well. And of course the Canadians, who were invaded by the Americans and successfully defended against that invasion, they get a sense of national pride as well, that they defended their border. So when this war ends, nothing geographically or in terms of governments has changed, but everyone involved sort of feels like they've achieved something. That's ultimately what happens. And of course the way North America kind of looks, manifest destiny. New Orleans is secure, America can go west. Canadian border, America is not going to go north. What happens on this field kind of determines really the ultimate way North America looks today. And that's a bit of the legacy of what happened here. If you have additional questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much for coming to see me.
Now, is it true Packingham went home in a barrel of bourbon or
of rum, yes.
Rum?
The 2 generals that were killed up there had the honor of being put into rum to be shipped back home.
That's going home style.
Is this also a cemetery?
At the other side of the field, where you see that little brick wall,